it's interesting to look at what factors there may be in our way of life or in society that tip us into mental ill health. Now, this is definitely something that everyone would have talked about at some time, that this element of society and that element of society, everyone talks about it. But at the same time, it kind of stays like that. We talk, we criticize, we complain, or we analyze, and we get rid of some of we vent, and then we forget about it. And then maybe next day, the next week, the next month, we do it again. So we're stuck in a situation and we're complaining. And no matter what truth there might be in our complaints, the complaining itself is no more than a way of releasing frustration and pain. So that once the levels of pissed offness has gone down enough, we can get on with our daily lives until it builds up again and we have to do something else. So this isn't really, obviously, anything more than a mere exercise in management. So we're going to be always under the thumb of these factors that are making us not feel good, and we're never going to do anything about it because we don't really understand anyway what it is about our way of life, the social world which we have created to live in. Well, we create it, we pretend it's real, and then we live in it. And we don't go into it enough in order to see what's really going on. So hopefully in the next 15 minutes, I just want to play around a little bit and try and get a little bit deeper, a little bit beyond just complaining about society, which I like to do as much as anyone. Of course, it's a great thing to do. Complaining about the government, complaining about the police, complaining about this, complaining about the other, complaining about whatever. So what we can say, what I can say anyway, that comes to me as the first thing to say, is that the whole setup is necessarily predicated upon pretending. In other words, if we don't pretend, then we won't get on. We have to pretend, and we learn that at an early age. And that's fair enough. Sometimes you need to pretend, sometimes you need to lie, sometimes it's healthy to lie. If we can't lie, if you're a kid and you can't lie to your parents, you're transparent to them, you don't develop as an autonomous being. It's a great discovery to discover you can fool your parents or fool the authorities. That's a great thing. But so it's not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with pretending and we must never pretend. The thing is that when pretense becomes a way of life, so that we no longer realize that we're pretending, then that's when the problems start. And the problems start when we pretend and forget we're pretending, because something gets lost. Something gets lost there, something gets misplaced, forgotten about. And what that something is our sincerity, is what we truly feel or truly think or truly want to say, want to express. So that, out of convenience, it doesn't just get put to one side. It gets forgotten about cleanly. And then what happens is it doesn't go away, but the pain that comes from losing this vital bit of us, which is our sincerity, will build and build and build, and it will cause problems. So we could say, just for the sake of coming up with some fairly stupid kind of name, we could call this pain that comes with pretending too much, and thereby, of course, getting separated from reality. And we can think about reality in terms of what the real world is, or we can think about reality in terms of who we really are underneath it all, underneath the pretense. And either way, it's the same thing. Either way, it's reality. And either way, it's reality. And both of these realities actually link up and become the same reality. Even though that may not be immediately obvious. So what we could say is that when we pretend, it's like throwing ourselves into something, saying, well, I'm going to act as if I am this person. I'm going to play a role. It's acting. It's taking up a role. And then the better I am at this role and the more rewards and more reinforcement for my role identity I get, the more inexorably I slide down the slippery slope until I think that I am this role, that I am that, this persona, this actor that I'm putting on. And at that stage, I've lost the chance of, I've gone beyond that point where I can actually tune into myself and say, oh, I feel unhappy, or I feel bad in some way, because the true sense of ourselves, the deep down nature of us that would feel those feelings has been disconnected. So instead, I can't feel what we could call genuine feelings. Instead, what I have to do is I have to engage in theatricality. I have to have theatrical feelings. This is a kind of, sounds a bit strange, but what it comes down to is these are the feelings that the persona has. The act that I'm putting on has feelings, has a whole emotional tone to it, has a whole type of energy to it. And the only thing about that is this set of feelings that the self-image has is a different type of thing from the feelings that we actually have deeper down. They're a different brand, they're a different type of a thing. And one way to explain a bit more why they're so different is to say that we don't mean them. Nothing that the extrinsic self, the self-concept, says or feels or thinks is genuine. Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It is an exercise in pretense from beginning to end. Obviously, it's an exercise in pretense. If I stop pretending, that extrinsic self stops existing. So that's like suicide for the extrinsic self. That's what happens when you stop pretending. That sounds like a bad thing to the extrinsic self, but to us, it isn't a bad thing. To us, that's a great thing. There's no harm to have a break from it. And just as I was saying, it's not like there's anything wrong with pretending, only when we pretend as a matter of course and all there is pretending, in which case the reality itself gets lost. I'm trying to think of a way of saying that. That isn't just repeating myself. So when reality itself gets lost, everything is a game, everything is pretense, and nothing is sincere. sincere feeling, if I have a sincere feeling, that feeling, to feel the sincere feeling or emotion that I'm having is a healthy thing. Because I'm connecting with myself, and I'm knowing what's going on, and I'm not pretending something else is going on. I'm just facing it. I'm connecting with what's going on. That is not possible. There's no connecting possible in the theatrical realm, which is the social realm. Instead, we have to play a game, and people know what we mean by that particular game we're playing. And so that does the same job. But this is a very different, there's a very different orientation energetically in this type of feeling, because it's all for the purpose of displacing pain. Not just displacing pain, but displacing the pain that I'm no longer connected with, that I'm no longer aware of. So it's there, and I have to pipe it out somewhere. I have to displace it. But I can't know what I'm doing. I can't let on to myself to see what I'm doing. I'm going to displace a bit of pain there, get rid of a bit of pain, so I can get a bit of relief for a while until the pain builds up again, and I have to try and get release again. So what we call emotions, and people often call it negative emotions because that's the kind of the flavor of them. They're pretty toxic, pretty negative. And as Ouspensky says, the source of all negativity, the source of all, he doesn't say toxicity. I don't think they talked about toxicity so much back then, but we can use the word the source of all toxicity is none other than the ego, the false idea we have. That's where it all comes from. Every last bit of it. That ego is culpable. It's the source of all the evil in the world, we could say, without wanting to sound all kind of heavy duty and judgmental about it and say how bad the ego is, because it's not that the ego is misbehaving because it's doing what it has to do. It's doing what it always does. The only thing it can do, it's being itself. It's being true to itself. And to be true to itself, if the ego is being true to itself, then it's being insincere, because that's how it is. That's the only way it can possibly function. So we can't have expectations on it. We can't blame it, because that would be pure stupid. Instead, we see what a thing is, and we see how it behaves and what it does, and we just see that clearly without lying to ourselves and trying to make out things are different from what they are without pretending. So the ego, or false self-concept, the image, the self-image, whatever we want to call it, is the powerhouse for toxicity, negativity. So things don't happen the way we want them to be. All this energy comes off. It's like it's like a machine that's going wrong. It's given not a nice sound anyway. It's like not a harmonious sound. It's and that's a negativity, and it's coming. It's not like I'm feeling the feeling, and that is good for me because I'm connecting. I'm not feeling the feeling. I'm discharging the feeling. I'm putting it out there. I want some other fecker to feel it, someone else, because I don't want to feel it. But I'm not saying that. So I'm saying, oh, this is so annoying. Oh, I feel so bad. Oh, this is so awful. But really, what I'm doing is like passing it on, displacing it on, displacing it on. And the reason I'm doing this, looking for attention, that's why I make so much fuss about it. So I have the attention, and when the attention's there, I can pass it on, because if everyone's totally fucking ignoring me, then do you know that I can't pass it on? So this whole business of making a drama, getting into the theatrics, it's all part of it. It's all part of passing the pain on. But no matter how many times I do that, it's not going to help me. It's not going to be in the least bit healing or anything like that, because all I'm doing is exacerbating a tendency which is leading me to my ruin anyway. All I'm doing is re-cementing my alliance with Satan, if you will. Satan being the way that I live my life on a false basis. And instead of doing what is truly what I want to do, I do what this distorted little idea of myself wants to do. And what it wants to do is just, it's never honest anyway. So it's kind of bad shit in that way. It's never honest. Never, ever honest. It'd disappear in a puff of smoke if it was honest. So instead, I mean, might sound dramatic to talk in a grand scale of good and evil, and something of that, that kind of monumental intensity. But just to think of it, if I spend my whole life not doing what is in keeping with what I really want to do, but instead do what this little implant in my head tells me I want to do, and hang out with the people that it tells me I want to hang out with, and my whole life is then in the service of this little gremlin, because that's what it is. It's an obnoxious little gremlin, and it's never going to be happy because it's kind of like a bucket with holes in. No matter, even when good things happen, it's going to be going, yeah, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. It's going to rubbing its hands together. Another 10 minutes and it's back to the same. It's miserable again because it can't contain happiness, because it's not real, because it has no sincerity. So it's the self-concept happiness, or it isn't really happiness, but when it's having a good time, that's just as insincere as when it's having a bad time. It's just as false. It's just another way of breathing life into the basic fiction that this image I have of myself is who I really am. So everything I do on behalf of that self, without realizing that I'm doing it on behalf of that self, is putting another nail in the coffin of who I am underneath that. It's burying it even deeper, and it's breathing more life into this. What is essentially a monster, in the sense that it eats my life and leaves me with nothing behind but a wasteland, because it never does anything good. Because when I say good, that sounds kind of very naive, but it never does anything wholesome, anything that has an effect that's kind of healthy on the world around me. Instead, I'm trashing stuff. So whenever the false idea of who I am does its thing, it's trashing stuff. There's casualties. It's leaving a trail of crap in its wake. It's like when you get really drunk, maybe, and you find out the next day all the shit stuff you did, and how people hate you, and you've been barred from whatever pub or whatever, and whatever. It's like that. It's had its fun, but look what it's left me with. So that's the situation most of us can kind of relate to in one way or another. That is exactly the situation of the mind created self, the role. And the mind created self, it's not the role, it's when we play a role and we forget that we're playing a role. And that's where the toxicity comes from.